Hi, and welcome to the Reformed Mind, a channel that documents my journey in embracing the Reformed faith anew. And at the time, I thought that I was Reformed, but over time, this has become increasingly clear that I was far from embracing the Reformed faith. And in my quest or in my journey to embrace the Reformed faith, I have embarked on a journey to study and hopefully for myself that which is the Reformed faith. And lately, and that's the reason why I want to share quickly with you some of the thoughts that have emerged. Somebody shared with me a link to a series of studies on the Bible translations. And basically, that field of study, or that body of knowledge holds that the Bible translations that we have are categorized in two, that is the formal equivalence and the dynamic equivalence. Briefly, the formal equivalence strives to stick to the original text, as it were, and express the original text in its equivalence in whatever language that translation is occurring. Whereas the dynamic equivalence is not so much bothered about what the original text is in its translation, but simply to convey the equivalent meaning of that word in whatever language that the translation is occurring. And one of the things that these series of sermons, by the way, by Robert Martin, and his book has been published by Banner of Truth, I believe, did a series of studies, and basically he highlighted in those series of studies. By the way, this was in their Bible study that he highlighted these two things. And one thing that did come out and which struck me and has sort of influenced this video today is that the dynamic equivalence, in its quest to translate the Bible into how it would say today, or in a form that would convey that message in whatever cultural setting, without sticking so much with the original text and finding an equivalent in that language of the translation, is that it is credited with a lot of what he called cultural smoothing, all right, or leveling. And today we call it cultural contextualization. And to some extent, he said that this has an impact. And it is crucial, therefore, that when you are settling for a Bible translation, that you pay particular attention to the philosophy behind that translation, whether it is formal translation or formal equivalent, or it is behind, or it is operating, or it is derived from a dynamic equivalence. And that did strike me, because he said that the formal, is it the dynamic equivalence translations, want to make it easier, want to convey or translate into a more readable, more user-friendly, in other words, a more it's simpler English or simpler languages. And he said that that has led to fueling, or at least, yes, fueling or promoting a culture of wanting things to be done instantly, and instantly without laboring on one's part. So we want to derive spiritual benefit from these translations, or we want a translation that allows us to exert minimum effort and expect more fruit, if you like, or results, if you like. And I think at that point when I was listening, it did struck me. It did strike me because that was who I was. I was a guy or a Christian who, when I'm saying that I believe in, say, sola scriptura, or I'm reformed or whatever, uh, this was not because I had spent time to labor and to understand for myself why I was calling myself or identifying myself with the Reformed faith. All right. I simply wanted the benefit or the fruit without ensuring that these things were a matter of personal conviction, or these truths or this reformed faith was a matter of study, okay, were a matter of me exerting myself to know for sure what this reformed faith was all about. To a large extent, I think I was identifying myself with the reformed faith simply because of parroting what others were saying, and just knowing here and there a few things, and I would identify myself as reformed based off of that. But what is the link with the translation? I think the link is this, and this is why I was able to identify myself with it, is that there is a constant drive for instant results, okay? And it starts with the sort of gospel that we're able to see. It is so simplistic, or it is packaged in a manner that requires that the hearers do not exert themselves as much, even mentally, okay, to process what this salvation is all about. And it makes it so easy to have counterfeit conversions in that sense. Also, when you look at it from there, there's also another aspect of wanting instant sanctification with minimal effort, okay? There's also another aspect of wanting spiritual growth without much labor, all right? And the Reformed faith can be identified, especially the one I'm accustomed to in Zambia, as one that exists because its adherents, so to speak, treat it like the newspaper. All right, you are able to understand what's going on in the world when you're reading a newspaper, but you're not expected to think, to exert yourself as you are encountering that information contained in that newspaper. And for me, that is my key takeaway. The translations sort of adds fuel to this drive of our age to want everything instant. Okay, we have instant this, instant that, and instant the other. And I think the translation also adds to it, because we've heard arguments to say that translations that contain old Elizabethan language are not good, because one will have to do a bit more, okay, in terms of knowledge, in terms of study, in terms of commitment to read the scriptures for themselves. And I think that has also extended to the hymnal. The grace hymns are almost extinct, if I can call it. Rarely are the grace hymns embraced, simply because the English is perceived as too hard, and you'd find that the more contemporary hymnals or hymns or hymn writers are sort of embraced. You have the Gettys or whoever sort of take over because they are English, they are contemporary, and men and women don't want to exert themselves, all right, to read and to appreciate these truths for themselves as they have been passed down from generation to generation. And I think that is something that struck me. I was that sort of believer who wants the maximum spiritual benefit or growth or sanctification where minimal effort has been spent. Okay, and that was me. And I thought that maybe this is something that was a watershed moment as I was listening, because this is important. Because when you look at the scriptures, or when I sort of just said, okay, so what does the scriptures say, I could see that the examples as well as what the scriptures say portray something else. I didn't find this instant result business in it. Okay, I didn't find that you can do missions instantly. I didn't find that you could do evangelism instantly. Okay, what I found there was that Paul would stay for years and spend time with the people. Okay, he would even say in terms of I was spent. Okay, I was there with you for a longer period. Okay, and to me already that communicates that the Reformed faith, it has to be or has to do with the long haul. The Christian experience is one that is not instant. It is one whose benefits or whose results are seen or appreciated over a long period of time. And time in itself is not just waiting for time to pass. It is when you exert yourself towards something. And I think that is the way the scriptures portray the Christian life. And so you hear instances, or you read where it says that get up the loins of your mind. Okay, or be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. It is constant. Okay, it involves that somebody will have to engage their mind, and to do so at a constant basis. And so if you want to experience growth, obviously your mind will have to be engaged, and that mind has to be engaged constantly and over a period of time. Okay, so and you also hear the scriptures highlight examples like that of Daniel. Daniel would spend time to pray. Okay, though he was a busy, high-ranking civil servant, but the Bible speaks of him as that his lifestyle was constant. Okay, his devotion to God was constant. It was one that was sustained over a period of time. And I think that speaks volumes. Christ himself, our greatest example, is pictured in terms of that he would early rise up to pray. Okay, and I think that was not just a one-off, but I think that was constantly. Okay, that was something that Christ himself practiced, and he did so for some time. And equally, we too, we should not buy into this philosophy or this craze that has come on the scene of instant things, instant spiritual benefit, because that is the reason why we are witnessing high levels and alarming levels of pragmatism in the reformed movement in Zambia, because men or churches want things of the spirit, but they do not want to do it the way the scriptures want it. So they are trying to manufacture this instantly. Okay, something that should take time, that's something that should take labor, something that should take a prayer for, like you have to pray without ceasing. You have to be fervent in prayer. Again, that this is something that you engage and actively do so over a period of time. People want these results immediately. And another thing that struck me was that you see even missions work and activity are tied to a period. They are tied to, to say 8 years or 9 years or 5 years, okay? And within that time, it is expected that it has to show signs of growth or signs of spiritual life. But that is not what we see. I think this drive for having things in an instant, without sometimes even exerting yourselves to work constantly at something, is or could be a problem. And for me, I did see myself, as I was listening to those sermons, that he was basically talking about me, that I would want a spiritual life, but I don't want to do the work that it is required in order for the Lord to grant a fruit to those efforts. I simply want to exert the minimum, like a newspaper reader, because you don't expect to be that engaged when you're reading a newspaper. But of course, at the end of the day, you have an appreciation of what is happening in the world out there. And I think that is the sort of Christianity that I was sort of buying into, or had bought into, where you want maximum results, but with minimum effort. But when you look at the scriptures, again, like I've said, it sort of says something that is totally different. It speaks in terms of one being committed. It speaks in terms of one working constantly at something, be it in prayer, be it in laboring in the word. It involves arduous labor in the Lord. And that is what I think would produce true and authentic and lasting reformed faith, even in this country. It is when we realize that we have to work, we have to labor, we have to exert ourselves, okay? We have to gird up the loins of our minds. We will have to do things fervently without ceasing. Then the Lord will establish a rich reformed heritage in this our country, Zambia. And so for me, this was something that I did draw much encouragement from, and it has surely changed my perceptions. I have changed in the way that I perceive the world around me in terms of the Reformed faith. I am now more aware that there is something that, even arising from these translations of the Bible, they do fuel a certain lifestyle, and they do put us in a certain worldview, because these translations don't want us to exert ourselves maximally, if there is any such word, and that to be found in the word and to labor in the word and to sort of engage in this arduous labor in the word in order to reap the maximum out of it. For instance, the Bible in itself is technical, like any field. You would expect that somebody in that field will have to exercise their minds to appreciate these concepts, these theories, okay? For instance, in the medical field. That too extends to the Christian life. We find things such as election, the Trinity, predestination, okay, justification and sanctification, and so on and so forth. We find things like eschatology, and Christians do not even want to exercise their minds in those things. Okay, they simply want to cost and live with a bare minimum. They don't want to exercise themselves in those areas. But at the same time, while they are avoiding such an interaction or such a deliberate lifestyle, they want to experience the maximum spiritual life. They want to experience the maximum sanctification possible on this side of eternity. They want to experience an outpouring of a revival in terms of seeing conversions. They want to experience all these good things, and while they want those things, they do not want to exert themselves to learn, and so on and so forth. And so for me, this is something that I've come to just appreciate for myself, and I don't think I'll be the same after listening to this series of sermons or teachings. And another thing that was interesting is that this thing was not taught in a seminary. These aspects were being taught to the general membership, and it speaks to the sort of philosophy or the sort of conviction that our brethren at Trinity have. And it is this, that every member needs to know, even those things that are treated as seminary material only for the church officers, that the general member in the pew need to know about the philosophy behind these Bible translations. Something that up to this point I had no clue of. Even when I was picking my Bible or translation or changing from the NIV at some point to the ESV, it was simply because this is what the church was talking about. And I remember at some point at the Reformed conference here in Lusaka, I heard one of the church leaders waxing eloquently about the ESV, and also that this was a gift for me. I didn't bother to inquire as to what sort of philosophy this Bible translation is based on. And as already explained, you can see that the implications of such decisions on my part have far spiritual consequences. Okay, and even when the church was changing, the church I was going to, even when it was changing to the ESV, I don't think there was any interest to know the philosophy behind it. It is only now that we know that this ESV is associated with a movement, and a movement that has brought about a lot of questions and discomfort, particularly on my part. But obviously, that is for another time. But for now, I'm just appreciating the fact that this material was delivered to the general member in the pew, and they were able to appreciate for themselves the sort of translation that their church was adopting, and why they were not supporting the NIV. Not that they were not going to use it, but to them, they regard the NIV as just a good Bible commentary, and that was the resolve. Especially that as Reformed Baptist, we take the matter of sola scriptura quite highly, and equally the doctrine of the Holy Scriptures is something that is central. And I think this deserves some effort. This deserves some attention on the part of those that identify as Reformed Baptists, to sort of appreciate, okay, what happens and why they are embracing the scriptures, and why they're adopting the sort of Bible translation that they're adopting, and so on and so forth. Because it's got implications, especially when you're saying that scripture is inspired. It has everything to do with a sort of philosophy behind that particular translation. And if that is consistent when you say that scripture is inspired and it is plenary, then the Bible translation becomes important, and considerations around that are equally important, especially that now this generation can be credited to being a generation that is so consumed with instant things, and a Bible translation such as the dynamic equivalence fuels or adds, fuels that drive for instant spiritual results without laboring in the word. So I just thought that maybe I could quickly share those watershed moments as I am trying to embrace, trying to take this journey of embracing the Reformed faith, that this sort of information did strike me, and I could see myself being painted in those series of sermons. And like I said, I would put a link to these sermons, and so that you can appreciate them for yourself, and hopefully you can embark on your own study and your own quest to discover for yourself the Reformed faith, starting with the philosophy behind this translation, but also to sort of check for yourself whether you have also bought into this instant craze, this drive for instant spiritual result while exerting minimal effort on our part. So thank you for listening, and have a good day.